Hey everybody, this is Grant Shipman. I was working on some formalizing, updating where I'm at with what makes a safe co-living house. So if you've thought about in regard to how to pick out a safe co-living house or a house that would be safe as a co-living rental, I wanted to share this with you. So I'm going to jump up here and share my screen. And let's see here. What is a safe house? And this is something that I want to make really clear. It applies to both transitional co-living and mainstream co-living. So transitional co-living is any kind of transitional house, right? Everything from college housing to sober living to senior housing to halfway housing, rooming houses, boarding houses, fill in the blank, it's transitional, right? It also applies to mainstream co-living, right? So that's for mainstream renters in a mainstream house, that kind of stuff. So a lot of people want to say, hey, let's just delegate this to the government, right? If they say it's safe, then it's safe. What is the problem with this, right? And I'm just going to share with you everything where I'm at. I've been doing living with intentional living, co-living since the year 2000. So this is my 25th year. Yeah, woo, but this is where I'm at. I think there is a very specific recipe. And if you get the recipe right, you're going to crush it. You're going to provide wonderful housing for wonderful people, and that's going to ripple out and really help heal and empower society. So the problem with letting the government decide is that the government standards are not only different from area to area, but they're also changing year to year. So what does that mean? What's an example of this? So basically, if a house was built in 1980, then what's going to be considered safe in 1980 is not going to be considered safe if that house was built today, right? And that's kind of weird. So when we let the government decide, really what the government is going off of is not safety, they're going off building codes, which have to do with safety but aren't the same thing. Or another specific example of this is that a house built in 2019, according to that age of building codes, would not be considered safe if it was built simply 2 years later. So instead of kind of kicking this off to the government and delegating it to them, we want to make sure that we ourselves, as real estate investors and those who provide safe housing for those who are renting and co-living houses, that we have our own solid standards so we can provide a safe house for a healthy co-living household. So my acronym I want to share with you all is APROSS, right? So pronounce it however you want. It's APROSS, APROSS, right? Kind of like a cross, but APROSS, right? So that's area, it's a safe area, safe property, safe room, safe occupants, safe staff, and safe systems. So let's jump right into it. Of course, you can read, watch, post any kind of questions, comments, anything that you would like to add. Maybe I missed something here. Go ahead and post those in the comments. So APROSS, area. I'm going to cover this really high view, right? I hope you guys benefit from it. So area, this speaks for itself, right? It needs to be in a safe area. Recently, my property management company was asked to manage a house in the Denver area, and there was just like a ton of graffiti and next door in a problem neighborhood. This is not a safe area. And side note, it's going to be very hard to fill a house, right? To have good occupancy in a bad area of town. So, safe area. The next one in APROS is safe property. What does this mean? Right? The property is finished, right? It's not a fix and flip that actually hasn't been fixed, right? It's finished. All livable areas are finished, right? If you go into a living room, right, the drywall's finished, the ceiling's finished, the floors are finished, right? There's no exposed wiring, right? All livable areas are finished. The house is inspected. If you're not qualified, if you're not able to do a general house inspection, right? And I'm not, I hire an inspector. right? So it's inspected. There's no known issues with the structure, the wiring, the plumbing, HVAC, pests, right? It's inspected and everything checks off as safe. There's no known issues. Little like spoiler alert, when you have a house checked out, almost always there's going to be one or two little issues, and then you solve those, right? And then there's no known issues. The house is in great condition. The house doesn't need to be like brand new everything. It doesn't need to be up to date in that sense, right? If it doesn't have granite countertops, right, and all of these things, that's not a big deal. But the house needs to be in great condition. It needs to be well maintained. And that house is going to be really, really easy to fill and keep at a high occupancy, right? For me and my management company, we have a lifetime average occupancy of 97%. And our renters stay a little bit over 2 years on average. Why? Because that's easy to do if you have a house that's in great condition, right? It doesn't need to be sparkly brand new, just great condition, well loved, well maintained. Then we move on in our APROSS to room. Now, the room, there's two main things about the room. And this is going to be important because when you look at a house and you're deciding whether that would be a good house for co-living, whether this would be a safe house for co-living, right? Well, if it's in a safe area, that's awesome. If the property itself is safe, that's awesome. And then you need to decide what rooms are safe to have as rooms, right? Or maybe you're adding some rooms, some bonus rooms. What makes a room a safe room? And we all know that this is important. I actually had some renters move into a house. It was this married couple, and they said they were renting a room in a basement and there was exposed cinder blocks and all kinds of problems, right? There's a lot of people out there who are wonderful and they need wonderful housing. And we want to make sure that the room itself, all the rooms that we are renting out in the co-living house are safe. So a safe room has to do with that it's finished, right? The walls, the flooring, the ceiling are all finished. They're in great repair. Everything is in good repair, right? Air ventilation. So there's vent exchanges. So air can go in and out of the room, having nice clean air. It's well lit. Also, there's outlets. It should also be climate controlled, right? So if there's a room that's being added or a room that was added before you bought the property, and it's not bringing in that AC or heater air, or maybe it's floorboard heat, however it is, that these rooms should be climate controlled, unless you're in one of those magical areas that don't need climate control. That's very, very few areas. And but that's a really big deal, right? Outlets, it's well lit, healthy air exchange, climate controlled, everything's in good repair. The room is completely finished. The last thing about the room is that it's entrance and exitability, right? So that the room ought to have a door that's a standard door, and it's lockable from the inside. So the door needs to be good working, right? It's lockable from the inside, right? That's what makes somebody feel safe. They can lock their door, right, when they're in it or when they leave, right? Also, that anybody in it could leave the room and even the house at any time with no hindrances, right? So they wouldn't be locked in, right? So if you think of a shotgun bedroom or anything like these, no, like that anybody in the room could leave the room at any time and even in the entire house without any hindrances. So that's really important. Let's move on to the next part of APROSS. So APROSS, we've done area, property, room, now occupants, the co-renters, right? Who is occupying the house? So occupants need to have a background check and a character check, right? And anybody who has been convicted of violence or theft, those people aren't allowed in the house, right? If a character reference happens and somebody was a terrible housemate, right, then those people aren't allowed in the house, right? So they pass your background check and your character reference check. You might notice that I didn't say in there that they need to pass a minimum credit or income check, right? Because those don't have to do with safety. Now, The next one is systems. So in APROSS, we end with a double S. And systems are really key. You're going to see it has the most items on this list here. So systems, I'm just going to go down here, is the systems for the house, like for instance, cleaning chore rotation, however that works for your house, that the house is maintained in a hygienic and a clean way. Also, you have updated smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. There's a fire extinguisher, co-tenant communication platforms, right? So when people are sharing a house together, they need to be able to communicate. That is also at a baseline, a safety thing. So my house is each house has a WhatsApp thread that everybody needs to be on. So it's a WhatsApp thread. Maybe you have a text thread, but there's a communication system there for the house. There's also a conflict resolution system. So conflicts between people, like we know, can arise to really safety issues, not just psychologically safe issues, right? But if people aren't given a conflict resolution process, then that conflict, right, can escalate and that becomes an unsafe situation. And finally, that the lawn, or if you're in an area with snow or ice or fill in the blank, that there needs to be systems so all of those things are managed. They don't become a safety issue. The last part of our APROSS, right, is staff. So staff has to do with you if you're managing the property, or if you are in if you're in more the pad split world and you call it a what do we call it? Operator, right? So an operator, or if you hire a management company, whatever it is, this is what staff has to do with. So staff need to be three things. First, the staff need to be reliable. That you are entrusting this property to reliable staff, right? And they're reachable in an emergency, right? Even at 3 a.m., if there becomes a backed up plumbing, or say a car. One time we had a car veer off a road. The car didn't have anything to do with the house, but the car veer off the road and ran into the house. So anytime the staff needs to be reachable, right? There has to be somebody with a phone that's on call, even if that's you. And finally, in emergencies, that this reliable, reachable staff person, that they direct the renters to emergency services when it's applicable, right? Staff, that if there's some kind of safety issue, the police should be called, or the fire department, 911, fill in the blank. Staff are not responsible for doing those things. They shouldn't be trying to solve that problem. They should be immediately directing the person to call whatever relevant emergency services. So that is what makes a safe house. APROSS, make sure it's a safe area, a safe property, a safe room, safe occupants, safe systems for the house, and finally, safe staff. I hope that this was helpful to you guys. Let's unleash the power of co-living. This is a residential revolution. If you are part of it, thank you. Let's all team together and make this as best as possible. This is Grant. I'm the co-living guy. I'll talk to you later.